What if Canada could steal Silicon Valley's crown in the next 3 years?
The cool thing is I think we're 90% of the way there. We don't even know it. Ironically, we have Trump to thank. If you're an immigrant founder in the United States, your family's not secure, your future's not secure, like why would you want to be there?
Chris Albinson, general partner at a $6.5 billion private equity firm, the co-founder of C100, and an early investor in companies now worth over $85 billion combined.
University of Waterloo now graduates every year more computer science and mathematics and engineering than the entire University of California system combined.
Why don't people know that?
They need to know it.
Why?
That's why we're talking about it.
In this episode, Chris breaks down the simple 3-step plan that could transform our entire economy.
All three of those things, you'll notice, does not cost the country a single dime. It's our choice. The best players all left Canada to go play for the United States, or they all stayed here and they played for Team Canada.
What would it take for Canada to take that step and to get that gold medal?
3 things, and can be done in 3 months.
Hi there. My name is Gregory Ford.
And I've spent tens of thousands of dollars traveling across Canada as a part of the Canadian Founder Spotlight Series. Because I truly believe that to move this country forward, we need more Canadians taking the leap to entrepreneurship. In these episodes, we're going deep on the real stories behind building businesses in Canada, the failures that led to breakthroughs, how they're actually growing their companies, and what it takes to succeed as a Canadian entrepreneur.
From coast to coast, we're building real momentum.
The entrepreneurs that you're about to meet are moving this country forward. So get ready to be inspired.
Let's show the world what Canadians can build right here at home. Let's start. Chris, welcome to the Canadian Founder Spotlight Series.
So excited to be on. Awesome of Sean to connect us and really excited for the conversation.
So you're one of the most connected Canadians in Silicon Valley history. General partner at a $6.5 billion private equity firm, co-founder of C100, early investor in Pinterest and DocuSign and many more, mentor to Shopify's founders, and now you've invested in companies worth over $85 billion combined. But you started as a kid from Kingston, Ontario. Take me back to the beginning and what drove you to leave Canada for Silicon Valley?
You know, I think like a lot of entrepreneurs, you try to get as smart as you can. And so my first startup I did when I was going to Western, it was okay. It wasn't great. Made a ton of mistakes. I remember this one time I had one of my classmates said, like, I can't figure out like why my business isn't growing. Like I can get it started and I get to a certain part and it tanks every time. And I got to rebuild and then it tanks. And like, you know, I want to learn, like, how do I do better? And so like, you know, he had done a startup and came in and spent some time and he goes, you don't have any salespeople. You know? And it's like, no, I just like make this product, then people buy it. And then they need me to support the thing that then I don't have time to sell it to anybody else. And it's like, oh yeah, shit. Yeah, you need salespeople. Like, how do you do that? Like when do you buy, you know, when you bring salespeople and stuff like, so that whole journey was really, you know, early for me is like, hey, I just got to get smarter and smarter. And that inevitably, you know, kind of pulls you to Mecca, you know, being the Valley. And so I, you know, was very fortunate to have my third startup worked with Terry Matthews, and we had company called Newbridge Networks out of Ottawa, and we grew that company to $1.6 billion in revenue globally, and you know, did business all around the world. And Terry was one of those immigrant founders to Canada who like just thought really big, and I was so lucky early in my career to be mentored by him, to just have that sense of like, you know, why can't we? Why shouldn't we get big? But through the course of doing that, like you kept getting pulled back to the Valley as this place where they had an information advantage. Like people talk about the capital advantage, sure, but really the thing that makes the Valley is the information advantage. Like you can have breakfast with a guy from Iran, you can have lunch with a guy from, you know, Pakistan, you're having dinner with somebody from Germany, and they're all coming through town all the time. And like you're hearing about all of their best ideas, their lens, and all of a sudden this place just has this information advantage. So I tried to convince Terry to let me go a couple of times and finally broke orbit on the 4th time during my last startup, Digital Island. And was going to do it for 2 years, like go down to the Valley for 2 years, hang out, learn a few things, and then come home. And we had an amazing run building these global compute infrastructures for companies like E-Trade and Schwab. Apparently, we should have called it cloud. Didn't know that at the time, but took that company public also and built that up to over a $10 billion public company and learned a ton. And kind of got stuck in the valley for 20 years, and eventually came home, which we could talk about why I came back.
What was it like being a Canadian trying to break into the Valley's inner circle at the beginning? Was it challenging?
I think like any immigrant story, like, you're kind of overwhelmed by the new environment and you really have a choice. Like, do you let it overwhelm you or do you just like go all in? And I went down, I really think about it as wave 2.
Mm-hmm.
So wave 1 was building the internet. The physical thing, which is what we did with Uber's networks. Like, Al Gore said he built it, but it was actually Terry Matthews who hit it. And then wave 2 was building the things on top of the internet, things like E-Trade. This idea of trading stocks on the internet was a crazy idea. When we launched Digital Island and built a company that allowed things like that to happen. And you either just go for it, or you get overwhelmed by the place. And because it has that energy and there are people from all over the world, generally, like, you just throw yourself in and it's okay. And there's lots of people like you.
How do you identify those opportunities? Because it sounds like you've been successful at saying, oh, this new thing is coming, this new technology.
Yeah.
Let's fucking bet on that
Right.
thing. Is that a gut instinct? Is it experience? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I think like everyone's got different lenses. I'm dyslexic. So early on, like, I had to develop other coping tools and taking information in on a different way. And for whatever reason, I kind of like see the playing field a little differently. Does that make sense? And it just worked out really well for me. And there's lots of founders that also have really interesting things that allow them to look in the places that aren't obvious, to see things that aren't clear yet, but willing to take the risk also to go after them. So I think over time, you could call it instinct, you could call it learned experience. Maybe it's I just can't read well because I'm dyslexic.
Sure.
Need to figure out things differently.
So you co-founded C100 in 2009 to connect Canadian entrepreneurs to Silicon Valley. What problem were you trying to solve then?
So if you remember in 2008, that was, the whole world was falling apart. And so, BlackBerry had gone down, which was made this town. There was 16,000 employees working for BlackBerry in this town. And there's one of those devices in every person's hand that mattered on the planet. And that idea started in this town. That company was imploding. Nortel, which was Canada's, flagship in technology for the world, building telecom equipment around the world, had gone bankrupt. And there was no venture capital in the country. So all these founders that I had the pleasure to work with, like, their companies were falling apart, dying left, right, and center. There's an expression that, if the United States has a cold, Canada has the flu.
Yeah.
Economically. Well, in 2008, the U.S. had the flu. I mean, Sarbanes-Oxley was going through, Lehman Brothers went down, Bear Stearns went down, the whole financial system almost collapsed. So I was at an event with the Consul General for Canada in San Francisco, and the Canadian government was trying to figure out, hey, how do we kind of get things going again, get things kickstarted? And I was at this event, and sorry if this is too long a story.
No, it sounds great. Keep going.
But and it was the worst thing you could have ever been to. So like the trade commissioner, and I love our trade commissioner, but this was a particularly bad event. Yeah, and he was kind of up there saying Canada sends the United States timber and water, and the United States sends Canada computers. Like, it was bad. And so I was backing out of the room slowly. And this other guy was backing out of the room slowly. And then this big guy was behind us, and he put his hands on our shoulders, both as we were about to leave, and said, "This is really bad, isn't it?" And we said, "Yeah, it's really bad. I think we're going to go." And he said, "I'm Stuart Beck, the Consul General. Can you come to my office?" was like the principal was like calling you out at the back of the classroom. So, but Stu, amazing guy, and he basically said, "Hey, look, Canada needs your help. We're struggling. Our whole innovation, ecosystem's on its knees." And said, like, what can we do? Should we do? And Anthony Lee, who's the other co-founder of C100, the other guy at the back of the room, who I had met before, he and I looked at each other and said, well, I had just come from India with Thai, which is the Indian diaspora in Silicon Valley. Basically, we're tired of the white dudes from Stanford running everything. And so they created this really amazing, inclusive community and basically said, hey, we're going to support each other and build this place where if you have ambition, we want a place where you can be supported, whether or not you're of Indian descent or not. And I'd just come back from India with Thai, and I met Modi when he was still chief minister, and Gurdad. I still have on my desk the India 2020 plan that he put out for the economic miracle that's happened since 2002 there. Met the CEOs of Wipro, Tata, Infosys, got brought into the presidential palace and met the president of India himself. And I'm like, this is just a bunch of tech folks that want to help each other, and look at this, the power of this network and how they're having impact, not only helping each other, but helping their country. And I was really moved by what they've done. And I said, like, maybe that's a model. I don't know if Canadians care, but maybe that's a model. And Anthony had a very similar experience with the Israelis, an organization called CICC. And we said, we don't know, but if you start with community first and you connect people with great ambition, our pattern recognition is that they will support each other. Steel will sharpen steel. Ambition will drive ambition. And that's magic if you can make that happen. And that's really the genesis of C100. So I'm a terrible marketer, but the idea of C100 was Canada's 100. So if we could find the 100 most ambitious Canadian entrepreneurs and connect them with the 100 most successful Canadians in the Valley, that would really drive an amazing community. And that's the origin story.
Where does this passion come from for Canada in particular? Because obviously there's a benefit from a business perspective, bringing these people together, creating the community, awesome. But there's also an element of giving back to the country and moving the country forward. Why do you care?
I think having the Canadian passport is a real privilege. Like, I worked in the Soviet Union. I worked in Mongolia. I worked in communist China. Sometimes you have to go away to reflect back at how amazing a place is. And Canada really is this amazing country that we built. And I think I've come to realize that isn't something you can count on. It's now something that should be assumed. Like, it's a joint experiment and requires everyone to lift and contribute in ways that they can. And I really, saw that firsthand when I was with Thai in India, and I was just really inspired by what they did for their country and how they cared about it. And we thought, hey, we could maybe try to do the same thing. And amazing to look back 15 years later, C100 is still going, and $80 billion has been invested in these amazing founders, and founders like, I met Toby when he was just starting Shopify, in the FM radio station above the FM radio station in the market in Ottawa. And to see what, amazing, things that he and Harley have accomplished is just awesome. And there's so many of those stories that, through the C100, we've been privileged to kind of get to know and support.
So you've teed up my next question perfectly. Tell me about mentoring a young Toby Luke and Harley Finkelstein from Shopify in those early days. Like, that's a very unique perspective that you have. If you could tell me that story, it'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, no, happy to do it. I think mentoring's got odd connotation. The way I look at it, and we'll talk about Kathy Priestner a little bit later, but it's like, how do you get the obstacles out of the way? And I remember we're early days at C100, and the older generation, so the late 90s telecom generation in Ottawa, which was super successful. were really kind of dominating the startup community in Ottawa, largely based in the West End. And they were really excited about this opportunity to partner with C100 and the connectivity and the information flow and the capital flows that would come from doing that. And they said, hey, look, we'd like to partner with you. We had a conference series we called Accelerate. So how do we go faster was basically the idea. And we had one in Montreal, we had one in Toronto, we had one in Vancouver. And they're like, hey, we want to accelerate in Ottawa. And I'm like, okay, cool. Let's talk about what that looks like. And at the end of the conversation, again, like you just had a sense of like this next wave of companies we were building out of '08, what they were, like the founders, the vision for them. And, a lot of times people kind of get stuck in the metaphor of their past. That's a huge issue in tech. And so I basically said, we'll help you on one condition. You do whatever Toby and Harley ask you to do. And these are just two kids, at the time with this startup in downtown Ottawa. I was doing, e-commerce shops.
Yes.
Right. And they're like, why are those founders so important? It's like, that's the future of your community. Like if they're successful and you meet their needs, then you're going to have all these other companies be successful. And to their credit, what was Oakry, which is the Ottawa tech community, moved their headquarters from Canada to downtown Ottawa. They changed their brand to Invest Ottawa. And they just started to support this next generation of founders. So for Toby and Harley, like it's mostly get shit out of their way. For those kind of founders with that kind of passion, that kind of drive, like it's like celebrate the heck out of them and saying, hey, like that's what the next thing looks like. Tell those stories, and then where you can help connect them to what they need, get things out of their way. I was really privileged. Trevor Olshick, who was a real mentee of mine when I was at JP Morgan Partners, really great young investor. He had gone on to go to Bessemer. And when Toby and Harley were looking for their first U.S. investor, I said, Trevor's amazing. I think you're going to get on really well. And so that's part of the connection. Bessemer made their first and most successful investment ever in Canada, investing in Shopify. Russ Jones, when Toby and Harley were looking to get a CFO, they got to that stage of, hey, we actually need a CFO. We need to think about going public. I said, well, Russ and I worked together at Newbridge. He's amazing. I think he'd, work really well with you guys. You should talk to Russ. So mentoring seems like a really loaded term sometimes. And I think it's just helping people with the things that they need help with when they need it.
What did you see in Toby and Harley early on? Because obviously you saw something. What was that thing?
I think if there's a pattern for me, it's like, do you have a dog?
I did as a kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know, a dog has 12 different toys it can play with? Like there's 5 balls. There's a soccer thing or whatever.
Father, daughter too. So yeah.
The first time I got asked this question, I thought about it for a long time. And the dog we had at the time, she loved this soccer ball.
Sure.
Loved it. It was her universe. She would go to that soccer ball over and over and over. Could go play with anything, but it was about that soccer ball. Yeah. And would basically make you kick it until your leg fell off or she fell down because she was so tired chasing the ball. Just loved it, right? And I think that's the thing I see in founders where they're organically really driven by a specific problem. And they just can't stop thinking about that problem. So in Toby's case, he was trying to sell his snowboards and couldn't find an easy way to sell his snowboards. And he's like, it's got to be easier to sell my snowboards. And then he just got fixated on this problem of how do you help people sell stuff on the internet and make it easier? And you look now, 15 years later, he's still solving that same problem.
Fucking crazy.
It's the same soccer ball, and whether or not it's him or Martin Bashiri, founder of Passage and Applyboard, and what he's done in terms of helping students from around the world find the right universities so they can find great jobs, another great company here, or Kim Tremblay, co-founder of Arctic Wolf,
It's one of the best cybersecurity companies in the world, founded right here in Waterloo, just trying to make the world safer and make it easier to do cybersecurity. Like every time I bump into these founders that have that through line, it tends to be like, there's just a problem they can't stop thinking about.
How do you figure that out? That they're obsessed with this one problem. You just see it, you sense it, or they just keep fucking talking about it?
It's a bit of both. I think it was about, probably 12 years ago. I was working with Jack Dorsey. I was in San Francisco at the time, and Pearl Sullivan, who was the Dean of Engineering at University of Waterloo, just an amazing leader. And we were talking about at the time, Canada had this we get our companies to a certain size and then we sell them off. We never really go for it. How do we get over this hump? How do we build companies for the world? Big, large, impactful companies. And it's not like we hadn't done it before. Companies like BlackBerry and Nortel, there just wasn't that many of them.
Yes.
And so we had this idea of bringing Jack Dorsey to Waterloo 12 years ago, and not the founder of Twitter, founder of Square, Hollywood founder story, but kid from St. Louis who, just got so fascinated with problems that he couldn't let them go and wanted to build them and solve them for everybody on the planet. It was amazing to have him here in Waterloo, tell those stories and inspire this next generation of founders, people like Marcel Cortez. Marcelo, started working with Jack. So he's a Brazilian immigrant to Canada, Canada said no to him like 3 times and he just wouldn't take no for an answer. He kept coming. But he ended up working at Google for a little bit, and then Jack Dorsey spun him out to start Square. And he's one of the 4 engineers that built half of Square, which is a $25 billion public company. And now, what is Marcelo doing? So again, Marcelo was with Jack 12 years ago talking about, Jack stuff. Marcelo's founder of Fair, which has done billions and billions of revenue, built and started right here in Waterloo. And so it's, getting those founders excited and supported to go build the next thing is 100% of the, thing I love being around. It's just a lot of fun.
And you can build that flywheel, because once they're inspired and they know they could do it and it keeps going, they inspire more people to do it and keep going.
If Toby can do it, Marcelo can do it. If Jack Dorsey can do it, Martin Bashiri can do it. If Martin Bashiri can do it, Kim Tremblay can do it. Jeff Shiner from 1Password here. You have these world-class companies right here. 3 of the largest cybersecurity companies, private cybersecurity companies on the planet, are all here in Waterloo. Mm-hmm. But Canadians don't talk about them.
No.
1Password, Arctic Wolf, eCentire, all came from the mathematics department at University of Waterloo.
Why don't we talk about them enough? What's that about?
So everybody knows Own the Podium. Every Canadian knows Own the Podium. Almost nobody knows who started it, why they started it, and why it works. So that's a woman by the name of Kathy Priestner. She was a silver medalist Olympic speed skater for Canada in the Munich Games. She still has that chip on her shoulder of not winning the gold medal, like anybody who wants to be the best in the world. Really quickly, her through line was then coaching sport. And then in '88, she helped run all the ice sports at the Olympics we hosted in Calgary. It was a great Olympics. Canada won no gold medals. It drove Kathy crazy. 2002 in Salt Lake, Mitt Romney takes over the scandal-plagued Salt Lake Games, flushes the entire team. Post 9/11 has just a couple of weeks to pull an Olympics together. And so he reached out to the most recent successful Winter Games in North America and the woman who ran the ice sports, Kathy, and said, will you help the United States out and be part of the U.S. Olympic org committee, which she did. And at the finals of the ice speed skating event, there was 2 Canadians that were ranked 1 and 2 in the world that were supposed to be on the ice skating for gold and silver. And they were sitting in the stands watching the finals.
Brutal.
And she was listening to them talk. She was just sitting behind them. And they were going like, the Americans must have like something special, some technology on their skates or some cool tech or something. Like, how do they get there that we're not there? And then it occurred to her. The difference was they decided to be the best in the world and work back from that and really go for that exceptionalism. And if you don't start with that, like that's what success is, you're never going to get there. And so when Kathy was asked to run the Vancouver Games in 2010, so 6 years before that, in 2004, she was asked to do it. And she said, I'll do it on one condition, that Canada decides to be the best in the world. That's the goal. We're going to be the best in the world. And then we know that one statement she said to now mean on the podium. Like it literally was, we're going to be the best in the world. That's the goal, the single goal. And then you work back from that. And she said, well, we have to use data to figure out which athletes have the probability of success, not the possibility of success. We can't spread the peanut butter. We need to concentrate our resources on our best athletes, give them the best coaches, give them the best facilities. And in a very short period of time, 6 years, so Canada had never won a gold medal in any Olympics we hosted before Vancouver. We won 14, more than any country before or since, including the Russians and the Chinese who cheated. Yeah. And I think it's just like that the power of this decision that we're going to go for it. We're going to go build for the world. And, you know, that's what is in Toby Luke. That's what is in Marcelo Cortez. That's what's in Kim Tremblay. That's what's in Martin Bashiri. That's what's in Jeff Shiner. It's in what Jack Newton is doing in Clio. Like all of these Team True North founders, and we intentionally use that same approach, celebrating and pulling together our best founders, because I think that ultimately drives the flywheel of success for the country.
And it starts with that shift in mindset. And do you think Canada needs to make that shift overall?
100%, it has to. I think, you know, if the last year has taught us anything, this idea that we can kind of simply coast and everything's going to be okay. Yeah. You know, I think it's been a wake-up call in the best way, that we need to control our own destiny, that we need to build our own country, that we really need to kind of pull together our best founders and support the hell out of them. And that's ultimately going to build the country in the best way.
You were an early investor in Pinterest, DocuSign, and many other massive successes. What do you look for in founders that other people miss? And how do you spot those potential billion-dollar opportunities early on?
Yeah, so to be clear, I don't think that's my superpower. I think much like Kathy Priestner, I'm really good at seeing it not early stage. Like there's some folks here in town at Garage Capital, Michael Litt, who's a Team True North founder, but also venture capitalist, Mike McCauley, who's his partner in Devin Galloway. They're amazing at spotting those folks early on and mentoring them. I think, you know, where my superpower is really at that next stage of growth. Like you've gotten yourself to 20 million in revenue. How do you go to $1 billion? And figuring out which founders really want to go there. And I think that was really sort of Kathy's superpower too, when she did on the podium. She wasn't coaching Pee-wee,
an amateur
skating,
getting started,
you know, like learn to skate, you know, like she was finding people that had the potential to be the best in the world and supporting them. And that's really, I think, where my skill set. And it was part because I had 2 startups that got really big, really fast. And it turns out that's very rare. Like only 1% of companies ever get to global scale. That means the people that have done it aren't that many. And so like if you've got that experience set, you know what it means to go from being in one country to 40 countries in less than 24 months. And I think that's where my experience really is best used, where I can be most helpful to founders. So really on that growth stage.
At that growth stage, imagine you're sitting with a founder. They've got to $20 million in ARR. Yeah. And they're stuck. And they want to get to that next phase. Right. And you're sitting down with them because obviously you've done this and this is your sweet spot. What's that step-by-step process that they have to take to get to that next level and get on track to becoming a $1 billion company?
I would say like it much like the way Kathy did it. It's like there's lots of people who want to win gold medals. There's lots of people that are really competitive in sport. Like how many Canadian hockey players want to win a gold medal for hockey for Canada? Thousands. But there's a subset that really have that special capability and that drive and that ambition. So it's, a combination of, that skill set and the drive together. And then how do you bring that in as a team to execute? Like one of the magic things about what Toby and Harley do is, Harley's Mr. Outside, Toby's Mr. Inside.
Yeah.
So the ability to build a team around you that complements you from a skill set point of view. So usually, if you had, so we have about 10,000 startups in Canada today. There's roughly about 1,000 of them that are at that 20 million range. Only 771 over 100 million, only 36 over 300 million, and 7 at $1 billion. So really working with those companies that look like they've got the probability to go from 20 to 100. So that's raw horsepower, drive, ambition, and just build. Like it's not just show. It's like, what does it take to build? Build a team, build the product. And again, that crazy fanatical focus on solving that problem over and over and over again and just working it. When you find those founders, and that's sort of like job one for me, then it's back to what I talked about with Toby and Harley. It's just about getting things out of their way. Who's the right investor for you on that journey? Who's the right teammate for you on that journey? Who are the other founders that you need to connect with? Like that power of community. When you're talking about less than 1% of founders that can get there, if you can connect them to other founders that are very similar to them at the same stage, trying to solve the same problems, that's the most powerful thing. That's the most magic thing. And that's one of the things I learned at C100. It's what I learned from Ty, which is this power of community and convening. Like every problem they have, the other folks have them and they can help each other solve them so much faster. Like it's cool that I had a couple startups that were successful, but it's 20 years ago. Like the problems they're solving today are fundamentally different. What it takes to recruit talent, what it takes to, win in a global marketplace, they're different. And so putting those peers together, that's part of the magic of Team True North is we get these amazing high performing founders like Mike Wessinger from Point Click Care, or Neil Koss from Geotab, that are, on that journey over $500 million in revenue, talking to the founders that are at 100 million saying, shit, if they can do that, then I can do that. But like, what do I need to learn to get from here to there? And getting them to work together is a big part of what we do at the True North Fund.
Is that your primary strategy and approach when you're working with these founders and you think they got that it factor and they're obsessed with that one problem? It's connecting them with other Canadian founders that have actually been there and done that and got to that stage and just giving them that belief?
So we work on 5 core things at True North Fund. So number 1 is using data to identify those high probability of success founders. So the same way Kathy Priestner is like, okay, who should be on Team Canada before the Olympics? Let's use data to figure out who's got the probability of success. So like we talked about earlier, like 20 million in ARR, really high growth and high ambition. So like that's the first filter. Once you know who those founders are, the 5 things that we do for them, number 1 is community. So getting them together so they get to know each other, support each other, mentor each other, solve problems, share talent. The second thing that we do that's pretty impactful is on the talent side. So I call it the Stanley Cup playoff problem. Good news, you made the playoffs. Right? All Team True North companies, they made the playoffs. But there may be a veteran or 2 away from winning the cup. So going back to the Shopify story, Russ Jones, who was with Newbridge Networks, $1.6 billion
revenue company grown globally. Toby and Harley didn't have that skill set on the team. So getting Russ to come in with Toby and Harley at that point in time when they're growing Shopify to get them ready and ultimately take them public was a really important, game changer, help them win the cup, if you will. We've got the woman who heads people and culture for Peloton, who's in Dallas, Texas, putting her hand up and saying, I'm thinking about working for a Canadian company, but I only want to work for an exceptional one. There's this weird thing where like the best talent doesn't have their hand up, and the best companies aren't necessarily easy to find, because if you're sitting in Dallas, you're looking at 10,000 Canadian startups. How do you know which ones are really good?
Yeah.
But if you look at folks like Kirk Sigsad, the CFO at Clio, Jack Newton's company that raised the largest private round in Canadian history, $1.4 billion they raised last year and just did $1 billion acquisition. Great example of Team True North company. And I was with Jack in Vancouver a month ago talking about that journey. But Kurt was with us early days at C100. So again, remember that idea of like matching the 100 most successful with the highest ambition. Yeah. Kurt's a great example of that. He was at JP Morgan, then he was at Clearco, and then through that network got connected to Jack, and then Jack hired him on, and now they're just a complete rocket ship. So this idea of connecting talent, highly curated, high impact talent, is part of what we do. So the woman who was the people and culture head at Peloton is now interviewing with 2 Team True North founders right now. The gentleman who took Snap public is interviewing with 2 other Team True North companies. And so the talent is really hard to find, and they usually don't have their hand up. The companies are not necessarily clear which ones are complete rockets. And if you can make those connections, super impactful. Another thing we do on talent is we're really privileged to have University of Waterloo's endowment as an investor in the fund. University of Waterloo is the only Canadian company in the global 25. What does that mean? Their alumni have raised more than any other university on the planet. They're in the top 25, and they're the only Canadian school. There's a lot that goes on in this town that's pretty magical in how things get built and why things work the way they were or they do. But it's great to have the university as an investor, because now the university is investing in these companies. So if you look at some of the magic that works in the US, the university endowments invested in their best students that then created all this wealth, that then donated back to the university, that then creates this magic flywheel. We haven't really done that in Canada. We have great students. We've got great universities, but by and large, they're not connected. Like they just kind of leave, and then there's this gap. And so I'm really thrilled the University of Waterloo said, like, no, we have to learn from that. And they went and looked at what MIT's done, and they looked at what Caltech has done, and they looked at the UCs and said, like, we need to invest in our best students. We need to keep getting these amazing students from around the world. Awesome. Having them be really successful, which they are, but now we also need to invest in them and keep that flywheel going. And so you have folks like Marcelo Cortez, I talked about, founder of FAIR, coming out of University of Waterloo. Now, the university's an investor, in their company. So why do I bring that up on the talent side? Because the University of Waterloo said, that's good, but it's not good enough. And Vivek Goel, the president of the University of Waterloo, and Mary Wells, the dean of engineering, came to me and said, like, we're tired of going commencement and shaking the hands of our brightest students and hearing them say, yeah, I'm leaving to Silicon Valley to go work for Google, or I'm leaving to Redmond, Washington to go work for Microsoft. I said, you know what? We're not just going to watch that for another year. We're going to do something to change it. And we launched in May a Team True North co-op stream where University of Waterloo is actively pushing their best students into Canada's best companies to build here. And I'm super excited about, that aspect of it to allow our best companies to compete against a Google and against a Microsoft for the best talent to build here.
Does it come back to like bringing it to Waterloo? Is it because we've seen success here before and there's that belief that, okay, we could do it here. And that's the beginning, is understanding, oh, we've seen it before. We've had success in this city. And it goes back to even an entrepreneur, of seeing another Canadian entrepreneur do it. Does it always come back to that, of first having that belief in yourself that you could fucking do this thing?
I think pattern recognition in life is a big thing. Like there's all these studies of like you are who you surround yourself with, right? Like basic psychology. Like if you surround yourself with happy people that are really ambitious, guess what? You're going to be more likely to be happy and ambitious.
Yeah.
And the University of Waterloo and this town is really interesting in terms of like where it all came from. Like almost 200 years ago, you had German immigrants come here that just wanted to build stuff. And you walk around this town, it's unlike any city, across Canada. You go into the parks and there are machines that build things, not statues of dead people, machines that built things. And that's what they celebrate. That's like the culture of the place. Like going back 200 years, you go across the bridge and it's like, oh, that's where the textile was. That's where the saddles were made. That's the felt shop that did the gloves. And the university itself is a unique creation. It was done by business. It was insurance companies that were trying to insure farms. And they're like, okay, if we're going to insure farms, we need people that are really good at math so we could do underwriting. And we couldn't find a really good place where they did math. And so they created a university. They built a university, University of Waterloo, around a math department to do actuary for insurance, which turns out to be the same skill set you need to do computers, which turns out to be the same skill set you need to do programming, which turns out to be the precursor for what you need for engineering. University of Waterloo now graduates every year more computer science and mathematics and engineering graduates, one Canadian university, than the entire University of California system combined. That includes Berkeley, Caltech, like all of those universities. UCLA combined is smaller than the University of Waterloo, but we don't tell that story.
That was going to be my next question. Why don't people know that?
They need to know it.
Why?
That's why we're talking about it.
All those stories.
But it is the fountainhead. And, Bill Gates, to his credit, in the 80s said, oh my God, like they're hardworking. They generally, first or second generation immigrants to Canada, incredibly well-trained, one of the hardest universities to get into in the world. University of Waterloo runs the global mathematics test, which is like some brilliance that they came up with, right? Which is like, okay, we're going to run the global mathematics test for kids in 5th grade and 8th grade. And now all of a sudden they know who all the smart kids are, and all the smart kids know who they are, which kind of feeds this engine. But then they did one thing that was absolute magic. Co-op. Very German, form of education, but said we're going to be 100% co-op university. Why does that matter? If you're a kid coming to this university and you do a co-op term at Twitter, and then you do a co-op term at Google, and then you do a co-op team, term at SpaceX, couple things happen. One is the university asks the kids when they come back from their co-op term, and the things that you were taught before you left, were they relevant to your work? So you have like a quarter of the university population coming back onto campus every 3 months saying, actually, the shit you're teaching me isn't working, or it is working. Like, what other university has that feedback loop from the best companies in the world? And so you have these really smart kids, and then this magic flywheel of what is co-op. And then we shouldn't be surprised that BlackBerry came from here, or that Fair is here, or Arctic Wolf is here, or eCentaur is here, or Passage is here. It is, the number one or number two most recruited school in Silicon Valley. Waterloo's brand is bigger than Canada's brand in Silicon Valley. Companies like Slack, Instacart, like we think of these as US, they're University of Waterloo founded companies.
So like we need to kind of connect some dots, I think, in telling like we have these amazing companies, we have these amazing institutions like University of Waterloo, we have this connectivity. We just haven't decided that we're going to put it all together and be the best in the world. And I think that's kind of like where Kathy Priestner was in 2004. Like, why hadn't Canada won a gold medal in hockey on home ice? How come?
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
Zero.
We have the talent. We're the best in the world at that sport. Why shouldn't we be the best in the world? And you work back and say, okay, we are going to be the best in the world. And then what do you have to do to make that happen?
So back to Canada and getting us to that gold medal spot. And I think going back to Kathy and that chip on her shoulder, that silver medal, I think we have that now.
Yeah.
Which is that's great. It's what we need.
I was up.
All right. You need that chip on your shoulder, or that motivation to go for it. Or even if it's a negative inspiration, you have that inspiration now to go and accomplish something greater than you would have thought of before.
Yeah.
But you said that Canada has the opportunity to be the next Silicon Valley. Most people think that that's impossible. If you could just break down your thesis and what would it actually take, like step by step, what would it take for Canada to take that step and to get that gold medal?
The cool thing is I think we're 90% of the way there. We don't even know it.
Wow.
So people think Silicon Valley's always been there.
Yeah.
It hasn't. Boston used to be the center of global innovation till probably like 92, 93. So what happened? How did Boston lose it in 92, 93? How did the Valley become the Valley? And there's lots of lore about this, but it was mostly about the smartest, hardest working people around the world deciding somewhat together around the same time to go to the same place. That's the fountainhead. So in 92, 93, 94, there was this funny time in football. Joe Walsh was coaching the 49ers. And there's the thing called the West Coast offense that was like crazy and chaotic and like more ambitious and more freewheeling. And it was just winning, right? And there was this like debate about East Coast versus West Coast, and West Coast was winning. About the same time, founders were finding their way to San Francisco and to the Valley, thinking about building companies differently. And these are really founders who are coming together from around the world into that place. And the people started leaving Boston in 92, 93, 94, 95. The venture capital firms followed. They weren't the starting point. They were actually the end point. The US government did some really cool things around, hey, like we're going to buy our own stuff. So they basically said, we're going to put aside 5% of every dollar we spend, and that's going to go to an innovative US company. So there was some procurement magic around that. And to the earlier point, the university endowment said, hey, like we should be investing in our own innovation, our own science, our own startups. So places like Stanford went to an inventor-owned mentality, meaning the university is not trying to hold on to the IP. Like if you are at the university and you invent something, it's yours. And then we should like not try to slow you down. We should try to accelerate you and invest in your success. And University of Waterloo is also inventor-owned, one of the only Canadian universities that is not unionized and inventor-owned IP. So all that stuff started to happen there. So why do I think it can happen here? And I don't think it's the next Silicon Valley. I think, Silicon Valley is not what Boston was, and we shouldn't be what the Valley is. Like we should do it in our own way. But if you step back and you look globally right now, and ironically, we have Trump to thank.
Yeah.
The Valley was the Valley because the smartest people in the world came together and they felt free and supported to go build big, meaningful things.
Yeah.
Really, since Trump's first term, going back now almost 10 years, this wave of we don't like the other, we don't like immigrants, we're going to like pick you up in the street with masks over our our faces if we don't like the color of your skin, and we're going to throw you in vans. That's happening in the United States right now. If you're an immigrant founder in the United States and you're on an H-1B visa, which is the hardest visa to get in the United States, your family's not secure, your future's not secure. Like, why would you want to be there? And it really started in Trump's first term and is accelerating now. When the US basically shut down on immigration for the last decade, Canada went the opposite way. We added 1 million new Canadians every year for the last 3 years. Now, there were bumps and grinds of growing that fast, and not all of it was perfect by any stretch. But you look under the covers of our highest performing founders, Rasha Katabi, immigrant, from Lebanon, Martin Bashiri, immigrant from Iran. You've got Toby Luke, who we spoke about, immigrant from Germany. I can go down the list. Martin Bashiri from Iran, like all of these amazing people that otherwise would have been going to Silicon Valley either can't or don't feel comfortable there anymore. And they're here now. Like, look, Raquel at Wabi, immigrant from Spain, like one of the most interesting autonomous vehicle startups on the planet, that came out of, Jeff Hinton's lab, also an immigrant, from the UK. The founder of AI was an immigrant to Canada, U of T. Most of his lab that is driving this massive wave, the biggest wave we've ever seen in tech, started working on AI as immigrants in Toronto and Waterloo 20 plus years ago. That are now building the most interesting companies. Like, all of the things we need are almost there. We pioneered the most, impactful technology in our life. Yeah. It's all here. All the talent you need to build it is all here. We're the only G7 country with a free trade agreement with every other G7 country. If you walk downtown Toronto, half of the people you bump into weren't born in this country. Like, the same thing that made the Valley so powerful, that the world was there, that you could have that meeting with somebody from Tel Aviv in the morning and, have dinner with somebody from Beijing at night. I'd argue the best place to do that on the planet right now is in Toronto. So, I think if we decide, much the way Kathy did in 2004, that we want to be the best in the world, we have the talent. We have to tell our stories better. We have to have a shared ambition to go do it, but it's there. There's a couple things that we need to fix, but they're not huge.
What are those things?
3 things.
Yeah.
We did something called the Canadian H-1B visa 24 months ago. I came up with that idea with Martin Bashiri and a couple of others. Longer stories how we came up with the idea. But it was basically about these H-1B visa holders in the United States, who are the smartest people in the world, hardest visa to get, getting thrown out of the United States.
Crazy.
And basically saying, hey, come to Canada. You'll find your food, your people, your culture, your religion. You'll be supported, you'll be respected, and you can go build big things here. Like, building big things here. We should be tripling down on that and saying 10% of our immigration level, however many immigrants we feel like we can thoughtfully bring in and house in a year, we should have 10% of those as Canadian H-1B visa holders. When we did that, the government was like, I don't think we can do that. I'm like, we're going to be embarrassed if people don't come, like all this sort of stuff. But I'll give the government credit. So Sean, who was Minister of Immigration at the time, said, like, this actually kind of makes sense. It's like the biggest opportunity since the handover of Hong Kong in 1997 to bring the smartest people here. Let's do it. We thought, well, maybe we could get a couple thousand. I'm like, no. You don't understand how big this opportunity is.
Huge.
I said, well, we don't want to invite people and then no one shows up, like have a party and no one comes.
Yeah, that's not a good look.
Not a good look. I said, well, how about 10,000 people to start? 10,000 of the smartest people in the world that have valid H-1B visas in the United States, hardest visa to get. Let's see if we can get 10,000 of them to come to Canada in a year. We announced the H-1B visa at the Collision Conference in Toronto. We got the 10,000 applicants in 48 hours.
Unbelievable.
It was front page of the Washington Post, the New York Times, San Francisco Chronicle, San Jose Merc, LA Times, Boston Globe, all saying Canada's going after the United States' best talent. Like that was our on the podium declaration. Like we are going to go be the best in the world and go for it. All in podcast did 2 sessions on it. Love them or hate it. Hate them. Elon Musk tweeted about it twice and said, really smart what Canada is doing. So I think like this idea of going after the best talent in the world is a really, really core thing that we can do. And honestly, it's our best relative competitive advantage. In a world where people aren't being welcomed, where immigration is going, getting pushed back on everywhere, if Canada can be the place where you're welcome, if you're hardworking and you're ambitious, regardless of your race or your ethnicity, your religion, like you're welcomed here, I think that's our number one thing. The number two thing is what I talked about earlier with the United States. We got to buy our own stuff. So like no grants, no credits. Like let's, if we're going to, quadruple what we're investing in defense tech, we've got amazing cybersecurity capability, in this town with 1Password, with eCentaur and Arctic Wolf. We're almost using none of it. We have amazing health tech in this country. We're not really using any of it to improve our healthcare system. So making Buy Canada the default, not the side project, I think that's really critical. And the last one is a little bit we talked about with the University of Waterloo is we have to invest in our best companies. And Canada is the only country that does not require its pensions to invest in its own country. We made that change back in 2005. It was a disaster. I think the finance minister with stroke of the pen can just say, no, we're going to invest in our own country. And if there was a time we had to do it, now's the time we have to do it. All 3 of those things, you'll notice, does not cost the country a single dime.
I was going to say these things are big, but they don't seem like they're impossible things to accomplish. They seem very realistic.
And can be done in 3 months.
So what's stopping us from doing that?
I think collective will, collective ambition, like
Podium.
On the podium, that on the podium moment. But I think there's a lot of people talking about it now. And so I'm excited that I think, we capture this moment in time, this crisis, if you will, and use it to propel us.
Okay, brilliant. So I want to move on to a lightning round, have a little bit of fun.
All right.
So we're going to do a quick lightning round. Just say the first thing that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, what's the biggest mistake a Canadian entrepreneur can make?
Not building for the world.
Second, what's one Canadian company you wish you invested in but you didn't?
There's so many awesome ones. So I had the opportunity to invest in 1Password. At the same time, I invested in a company out of Quebec called Password Box.
True.
And so at the time I talked myself into I can't invest in 2 companies that are going to compete for the same idea. So I invested in Password Box, which is a really great outcome. Intel bought it relatively quickly for $100 million. I should have invested in both companies. I love what Jeff Shiner and the founders of 1Password have done, built an amazing world-class business.
Okay. If you could change one thing about Canadian tech culture, what would it be?
I think if we could be a little bit more like the Indians in the sense of having that global ambition and working together and cheering each other on, and cheering on in particular those founders with exceptional ambition. Like there's this, often talked about tall poppy syndrome. Like if anybody gets too successful, there's, I would say most of the hardworking building founders 100% celebrate their success. And you could see that even in the last week on Canada Day, July 1st, Jack Newton announced $1 billion acquisition for Clio. the largest acquisition a Canadian startup has done. And I would say 99.9% of the founders that were commenting on that announcement were like, fuck yeah, let's go. Let's be the best in the world. Let's be the biggest in the world. Like, let's play on the big stage. And so I think that's changing. But there is a little bit of this, niggly stuff in the back, and I just don't think it's helpful. So hopefully that keeps getting quieter, and on the podium, let's go, let's come together, let's support each other when we're winning, let's support each other when we're not winning, and let's just support each other to build big, that becomes what we all talk about. And BetaKit did a great conference in Toronto recently around this idea of building big ideas. And I think it is becoming more the dominant part of the conversation. I think that's really exciting.
Okay, brilliant. And if
that wasn't a short answer, sorry.
It's good. If you had the chance to meet with your 25-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself?
I kind of think about myself as Forrest Gump, meaning I've been really fortunate. And I'd love to say that there was, planned and rationale. I just happened to be in the right places at the right time. How did working with Moscow telephone company in the Soviet Union connect me to working with Terry Matthews to building Newbridge Networks to $1.6 billion? I don't know. How did that connect me to working with Alan Linewind, who was the CTO at Cisco, Slack, ServiceNow, Zynga, and now Webflow to build a company called Digital Island? I think keep being curious. Curiosity is a good thing. Keep being hungry, keep learning. I think I got really lucky. I found the cherry in the box of chocolates.
Love it. Okay. So you're now focused on True North Fund.
Yeah.
What's the mission for people that don't know about it?
Yeah. So True North Fund is very intentionally modeled on what Kathy Priestner did on the Podium. So much so that we're really privileged to have her as a strategic advisor and an investor in the fund. But the idea is to use objective global standard to identify those Canadian companies that are in the 1% highest performing private companies in the world that happen to be Canadian, pulling those together as a community first and foremost. So unlike a normal venture fund, we actually actively start helping and working with them before we invest. And then through that, we have the opportunity to invest in those founders through both growth and secondary investing. And ultimately, we're really fortunate not only to have great institutional investors like EDC and TD, University of Waterloo's endowment. One of the things I'm really proud about is we have over 100 founders as personal investors in the fund. Through the fund, they all become investors in each other. And so this idea is if we identify the best companies, we create community, we drive success and momentum that will ultimately come back. And then that creates the next generation of founders and the communities to support them.
Love it. So what 3 Canadian companies, and this could be within your fund or outside, but what 3 Canadian companies should we be watching right now? And maybe they're not getting the attention that they deserve.
So I'll talk about 3 quickly. So one I talked about was Clio. So that's founded by Jack Newton in Vancouver. Largest private financing in Canadian history, $1.4 billion Canadian last year. Just announced 2 months ago a $1 billion acquisition, basically bringing AI to legal tech globally. One of the largest, fastest growing companies. Over 600 employees working for Jack and team in the Lower Mainland in BC. I think it's going to be one of the biggest success stories out of Canada in the next 24 months. Next one, so I'm going to talk about the over $500 million club that we're all going to know these names soon, but no one's talking about them yet. The next one is Arctic Wolf, built right here in Waterloo. One of the largest private cybersecurity companies on the planet, over $500 million in revenue last year, US. So almost $750 million Canadian, on a huge trajectory, basically doing next generation cybersecurity using AI at scale. But they they've been doing AI for 10 years, right? Like everyone thinking AI is a today thing, but like the real AI companies were actually started over a decade ago.
Yeah.
So those are two examples. And a third one, I really love that, had a funny conversation with Pat Lohr, who's a really successful early stage investor, which is not my skill set, out on the West Coast. And I said, Pat, what's the best company in Western Canada? And he said, I could tell you, but you're never going to be able to invest. And I said, like, dude, that's like red meat in front of a dog. Like, let's go meet these founders. Let's go hang out. And was really privileged to meet Hussein Mullah, who's the CEO of a company called Purpose Med, and his two co-founders in Calgary. And nobody was talking about this company. They were not on anybody's radar in Canada. But very, very quietly, if you look at the Deloitte Fast 500 list for 2024, this is the fastest growing 500 companies in North America, including public companies. There's only one Canadian company in the top 10, Purpose Med out of Calgary, coming at number 7. And they came at this idea of how do you solve for people that have endemic disease. So Hussein's a doctor. During COVID, he was working in Calgary Hospital, and he was seeing these people that had endemic disease where they're going to have the disease for the rest of their life. The things that they need to do to stay healthy are relatively consistent across those patients, and they need to stay on their medication and they need the right support. And they were just getting thrashed in the system. It was awful for them because they had to come in and explain what their disease was. The doctors weren't necessarily experts in that disease. Yeah. They took a ton of time, ton of tests that weren't needed. The patients were frustrated. The system was overloaded. And he said, this is crazy. Like, why don't we just have a specialized way of caring for these people where they can get the doctors that they need that are specialized in their disease, along with a community that can support them and keep them healthy and learn from each other. That's where some of the cool AI stuff comes together. Like, if you've got this disease and you have this symptom, like, how do you not go to WebMD and get down a crazy rat hole, but actually get the information you need that really helps you? And an integrated pharmacy, so you can get your meds and stay on your meds, because staying on your meds is probably the number one thing to keep you healthy. And that was the simple idea of Purpose Med. And they said, like, where's the first big problem to go solve, where you've got a big population of folks that are really underserved and horribly served. And it was really the LGBTQ plus community that is on a drug called PrEP to prevent HIV and AIDS. And so Purpose Med said, like, we're going to go solve, going back to that soccer ball. Yeah, Hussein's like, we got to help these people. Like, it's not that complicated. We know what their disease is. We know what their issues are. We just need to support them and make sure that they have what they need. And he's built the 7th largest and fastest growing company in North America, Purpose Med in Calgary, doing that.
It's funny, you hear these stories that you don't hear often, and you feel very optimistic about the future in this country. But in your opinion, what will Canadian tech and tech industry and even entrepreneurship in general look like in 10 years?
I'm an optimist.
Yeah.
Dyed in the wool. I think the hardest thing to do is to bring the smartest people in the world together. We've already done it. I'm so excited. Like, these amazing founders are here. They've been building for a decade. There's no other place in the world that they feel welcome. And so much like when the center of innovation left Boston to Silicon Valley, it was led by the smartest people leaving and coming together in a new place. That's now happened. And, Canadian Venture Capital Association just did a study in February of the financings of Canadian companies over 50 million. So think about that as companies doing a $50 million round. So it's a big round. It's mostly our best companies. Just in the last 10 years, $40 billion invested. Silicon Valley Bank besides going bankrupt. They do really great research. If they had read their own research, they probably wouldn't have gone bankrupt. 2 years ago, in the second half of 22, they do a global lens on innovation around the world. And the final page basically said, "Go north, young man, go north." And it said Canadian startups were growing 38% more capital efficiently than their US peers. We always knew it was more capital efficient to grow a business here, but it was really interesting to see the side-by-side data. The fall off your chair, I've never seen data like this before. Canadian companies were growing faster than their US peers 5 quarters in a row. What changed? Those entrepreneurs that used to be going to the United States, used to be going to the Valley, are now here. So that data was starting to show up in 22. The conclusion was US capital is not dumb. Global capital is not dumb. If you can grow faster and use less money to grow, more investment will come. So much like when the Center of Innovation left Boston, it started with the people and then the capital came. Going back to that Canadian Venture Capital Association study in February, $40 billion has been invested in the last 10 years, and 66% of that money has come from the United States to go into Canada's best companies. Like, the data is piling up. It's our choice whether or not we're going to look back and say the best hockey players and the best coaches all left Canada to go play for the United States, or they all stayed here and they played for Team Canada. And I think that's the choice that's in front of us right now.
So let's wrap it up with that question then. How do we keep those A players here and really push for that gold medal?
I think, again, like, making this the best place in the world to build, regardless of your religion, where you came from, the food you eat, like, still being the most amazing place in the world. And I think we have that. So that's our advantage. We just can't lose it. The second one is celebrating the heck out of it. Like, we're having this conversation, like getting you in front of all these founders so they can tell their stories, and that ambition, because I think, when you see it, you feel it. Others, like, if Toby Luke can do it, I can do it. And you should do it. And it's not impossible. Like, more of that storytelling. And then a few of the other things that I talked about, like buying our own stuff and investing. Like, the cool thing about those companies is 66% of that $40 billion got invested was from the United States. The concerning part was only 13% was from Canadian sources. Said differently, the United States owns 66% of our best companies. We only own 13%. So more Canadian capital coming together behind our best companies, I think, is the last piece. But again, all doable.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for what you're doing for Canadian entrepreneurship in general and for this country. I've learned a lot in this conversation. I'm looking forward to chatting again for sure.
Right on. Welcome to Waterloo. Hopefully not your last visit here.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.